Part 1. The new student, the yellow school bus pulled up to the front gates of Lincoln High School just as the morning bell rang. Among the students stepping off was a young man named Devin Carter, clutching a worn backpack that had seen better days. He took a deep breath and looked up at the 3-story brick building that would be his new school. It looked so different from his old one. The windows were clean, the walls freshly painted, and there wasn't a single crack in the concrete steps leading to the main entrance. Devin's mom had worked double shifts for 6 months to save enough money to move them out of their old neighborhood. She wanted better opportunities for her son, especially better schools. His previous school had outdated textbooks, broken computers, and teachers who were too tired to care. But his mom believed in him. She'd seen how he stayed up late doing math problems by candlelight when they couldn't pay the electric bill. She'd watched him help his younger sister with her homework even when he was exhausted. She knew he had potential, and she was determined to give him a chance. Walking through the hallways, Devin noticed everything. The lockers were new and actually worked. The floors were polished. There were posters about college fairs and science competitions on the walls. Students chatted in groups, laughing and sharing stories about their summer vacations. Some had the latest phones and expensive sneakers. Devin looked down at his own shoes, the same pair he'd been wearing for 2 years. They were clean but worn out at the edges. He found his locker and fumbled with the combination lock. After 3 tries, it finally opened. He put his lunch bag inside, a simple sandwich his mom had made that morning before rushing off to her morning shift at the hospital. He could hear her voice in his head saying, "Keep your head up, baby. You belong there just as much as anyone else." The morning classes went by quickly. English, history, and chemistry. In each class, Devin sat quietly, taking notes and avoiding eye contact. He was used to being invisible. At his old school, it was safer that way. But here he wanted to make a fresh start. He wanted to show what he could do. Then came 4th period, advanced mathematics with Mr. Peterson. Devin walked into the classroom and immediately felt the difference. This wasn't like the other classes. The students here had a certain confidence about them. They talked about summer math camps and online coding courses. Some were already writing equations on the whiteboard, showing off to each other. Devin found an empty seat in the back row and sat down quietly. Mr. Peterson walked in exactly as the bell rang. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and glasses that sat low on his nose. He wore a tie that looked expensive and carried himself like someone who'd been teaching for decades. He placed his leather briefcase on the desk with a heavy thud and surveyed the classroom. "Good morning, Klasky," he said, his voice firm and commanding. "I hope you all had a productive summer. This year, we'll be covering advanced calculus, trigonometry, and if time permits, some introduction to differential equations. This is not an easy class. Only serious students survive here." Devin listened carefully, his pen ready. He loved math. It was the one subject where things made sense, where there were clear answers and logical steps. Numbers didn't care about where you came from or what you looked like. They just were. Mr. Peterson began taking attendance, calling out names from his roster. When he reached Devin's name, he paused and looked up. "Devin Carter?" he said, his eyes scanning the room. "Here, sir," Devin replied, raising his hand slightly. Mr. Peterson's eyes found him in the back row. There was a brief moment, just a flicker, where the teacher's expression changed. It was subtle, but Devin had learned to notice these things. It was the same look he'd gotten from store clerks who followed him around, from police officers who asked him where he was going, from people who assumed things about him before he even opened his mouth. "Transfer student?" Mr. Peterson asked, though he clearly already knew the answer from his paperwork. "Yes, sir. From Roosevelt High across town." "Roosevelt," Mr. Peterson repeated, and a few students snickered. Everyone knew Roosevelt's reputation. It was the school where test scores were low and metal detectors guarded the entrance. "Well, Mr. Carter, I should let you know that this class moves fast. We don't slow down for anyone. If you find yourself struggling, there are remedial math classes available." Devin felt his face get hot. He hadn't even solved one problem yet, hadn't taken one test, and already this teacher was suggesting he'd fail. "I'll keep up." "Sir," Devin said quietly. "We'll see," Mr. Peterson replied, turning back to his attendance sheet. The class began, and Mr. Peterson jumped straight into complex equations. He wrote rapidly on the board, explaining concepts that built on previous knowledge. Some students nodded along, clearly familiar with the material. Others frantically took notes. Devin watched carefully, his mind working through each step. He'd taught himself a lot of this already from library books, spending hours in the public library because it was quiet and had air conditioning. Throughout the class, Mr. Peterson asked questions and called on students randomly. Hands shot up, students eager to show what they knew. Devin raised his hand a few times when he knew the answer, but Mr. Peterson's eyes seemed to skip right over him, calling on other students instead. When a girl named Rebecca gave a wrong answer, Mr. Peterson gently corrected her. Close, but think about the formula again. You'll get it. When a boy named Tyler struggled with a problem on the board, Mr. Peterson encouraged him. Take your time. Work through it step by step. But when Devin existed in that classroom, he might as well have been invisible. After class, as students filed out, Devin gathered his things slowly. He noticed a girl with curly red hair watching him. Her name was Ashley Brooks, and she'd been in the class for 2 years. She'd seen Mr. Peterson's behavior before, but it had never been quite this obvious. "Hey," she said, approaching Devin's desk. "Don't let him get to you. He's just old school." Devin looked up, surprised that anyone was talking to him. "Thanks, I'm Devin. Ashley. If you need notes or anything, let me know. This class can be brutal." She smiled genuinely, and Devin felt a small bit of tension release from his shoulders. "I appreciate that," he said. As Devin walked to his next class, he thought about what had just happened. He'd faced teachers who didn't believe in him before. He'd dealt with low expectations his whole life. But something about this felt different. Mr. Peterson wasn't just indifferent. There was something deliberate in the way he'd dismissed Devin, in the way he'd suggested remedial classes before Devin had even picked up a pencil. Devin made a decision right then in that hallway, surrounded by students who had no idea what it felt like to be judged before you could prove yourself. He would show Mr. Peterson exactly what he was capable of. He would work harder than anyone in that class. He would prove that where you came from didn't determine where you could go. His mom had sacrificed too much for him to give up now. And Devin Carter was many things, but a quitter wasn't one of them. He just didn't know yet that in a few weeks he'd have a chance to prove himself in a way he never imagined. A chance that would change everything. Part 2. The singling out 2 weeks had passed since Devin's first day at Lincoln High, and things in Mr. Peterson's advanced mathematics class had only gotten worse. Every day felt like a test, not of his math skills, but of his patience and determination. It started small, little things that Devin tried to tell himself he was imagining. But as the days went on, the pattern became impossible to ignore. On the 3rd day of class, Devin had raised his hand to answer a question about quadratic equations. His hand was up first, and he knew the answer cold. Mr. Peterson's eyes swept across the room, paused briefly on Devin, then moved on. "Tyler, what do you think?" the teacher had asked instead. Tyler had stumbled through an incorrect answer, and Mr. Peterson had patiently guided him to the right solution. Devin had lowered his hand slowly, feeling a familiar knot form in his stomach. This happened again and again. Devin would know the answer, raise his hand with confidence, and watch as Mr. Peterson called on literally anyone else, even students who weren't raising their hands, even students who clearly didn't know the answer. The homework assignments were another story entirely. Devin spent hours on his math homework each night, working through problems at the small kitchen table in their apartment. He showed every step of his work, double-checked his calculations, and made sure his paper was neat and organized. His mom would come home from her evening shift and find him still working, the light from the lamp casting shadows across his notebook. When he turned in his assignments, something strange happened. While other students got their graded papers back within a day or two, Devin's always took longer. And when he finally got them back, they were covered in red marks. Not because his answers were wrong, but because Mr. Peterson would circle his work and write comments like, "show more work," or "unclear methodology," even when Devin had shown every single step. Meanwhile, Tyler turned in homework with half the work shown and got full credit with a "good job." Written at the top, Ashley noticed. She sat 2 seats ahead of Devin and would glance back at him sometimes with a look that said, "I see what's happening." During group work, she'd partner with Devin and was amazed at how quickly he could solve complex problems. "You're really good at this," she'd whispered one day while they worked on polynomial equations. "Like, really good. Better than most people in this class." Devin had just shrugged. He didn't want to make waves. He didn't want to be seen as the angry transfer student who caused problems. so he kept his head down and worked harder. But Mr. Peterson's behavior escalated. During class discussions, the teacher developed a habit of making pointed comments. When teaching a particularly difficult concept, he'd say things like, "Now this requires a strong foundation in mathematics." Those of you who attended quality preparatory programs will find this easier. His eyes would drift to Devin when he said things like this. Or he'd mention, "Students from rigorous academic backgrounds tend to grasp these concepts more quickly." Again, a glance toward the back row where Devin sat. One day, during a lesson on calculus, Mr. Peterson was explaining derivatives. A student named Hannah asked a question about the practical application of the concept. It was a good question, the kind that showed real thinking. Mr. Peterson smiled warmly. "Excellent question, Hannah. That's the kind of critical thinking that separates good students from great ones." Later that same class, Devin raised his hand and asked about an alternative method for solving the same type of problem, one he'd read about in an advanced textbook from the library. Mr. Peterson's smile disappeared. "Mr. Carter, let's focus on mastering the basics before we worry about alternative methods. Perhaps you should spend more time on the standard curriculum." The dismissal was sharp and public. A few students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Devin felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he nodded and said nothing. Ashley turned around and mouthed, "That was a good question." Her friend Melissa, who sat beside her, had also started noticing the pattern. During lunch one day, they talked about it in hushed voices at their table. "He's definitely harder on Devin than anyone else," Melissa said, pushing her food around on her tray. "I've been in Peterson's class for 2 months now, and I've never seen him act like this." "Should we say something?" Ashley asked. "Say what? That we think he's being unfair?" "He'll just deny it. Adults always do." Melissa had experience with this. Her older brother had faced similar treatment from a teacher 2 years ago, and when her parents complained, it had only made things worse. Meanwhile, Devin continued to excel despite the obstacles. His test scores were among the highest in the class. On the first major exam, he'd scored a 98%. Only 2 other students had scored higher. When Mr. Peterson handed back the tests, he made a point of congratulating those 2 students publicly. "Outstanding work, Rebecca and Chen. This is exactly the level of excellence I expect." Devin's test landed on his desk with no comment. But there was a note at the top, "See me after class." His heart sank. A 98%, and he was being asked to stay after class? He spent the rest of the period wondering what he'd done wrong. When the bell rang and the other students filed out, Devin approached Mr. Peterson's desk. Ashley lingered by the door, pretending to organize her backpack, wanting to make sure Devin was okay. "Mr. Carter," Mr. Peterson said, not looking up from his papers, "I wanted to discuss your test." "Yes, sir." "Did I do something wrong?" "Your score is high. Surprisingly high." The teacher finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "I just want to make sure you understand the importance of academic integrity in this class." Devin felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. "I didn't cheat, sir. I didn't say you did. I'm simply reminding you of the policies, especially for students who might feel pressure to perform beyond their preparation level. I studied hard for that test. I earned that grade." Mr. Peterson leaned back in his chair. "I'm sure you did. Just remember, this class gets much harder. What you knew before coming here might not be enough. I've seen many students start strong and then fall apart when the real challenges begin." Devin stood there, his hands clenched at his sides. Every part of him wanted to defend himself, to argue, to demand fairness. But he'd learned long ago that arguing with authority figures rarely worked out well for someone who looked like him. "I understand, sir," he said quietly. "Good. You're dismissed." Devin walked out of the classroom, and Ashley was waiting for him in the hallway. "What did he say?" she asked. "He basically accused me of cheating without actually accusing me of cheating." Ashley's eyes widened. "That's insane. You're one of the smartest people in that class." "Doesn't matter," Devin said, adjusting his backpack. "It is what it is." But as he walked to his next class, something shifted inside Devin. He'd been trying to stay invisible, to not cause trouble, to just get through the year. But Mr. Peterson wasn't going to let him do that. The teacher had decided who Devin was before giving him a real chance. That evening, Devin went to the public library like he did most days after school. He found the mathematics section and pulled out every advanced textbook he could find. If Mr. Peterson wanted to doubt him, fine. but Devin would make it impossible to deny his abilities. He didn't know it yet, but an opportunity was coming. A chance to show everyone, including Mr. Peterson, exactly what he was capable of, and when that moment arrived, Devin would be ready. He had to be. His mom hadn't worked those double shifts for him to give up now. Part 3. The public challenge Friday afternoon arrived with an unusual tension in Mr. Peterson's advanced mathematics class. It was the end of October, and the trees outside the classroom windows had turned brilliant shades of orange and gold. But nobody was looking at the scenery. Something different was happening today. Mr. Peterson walked into class with a strange energy about him. He seemed more animated than usual, almost excited. He placed his briefcase on the desk and turned to face the class with what could only be described as a smirk. "Good afternoon, class," he began, clasping his hands together. "Today I have something special planned, a challenge, if you will." Students exchanged curious glances. Devin, sitting in his usual spot in the back row, looked up from his notebook. Challenge problems weren't uncommon in advanced math classes, but something about Mr. Peterson's tone felt off. "As you all know," the teacher continued, walking slowly toward the blackboard, "mathematics at the highest level requires not just memorization, but true understanding. The ability to see patterns, make connections, and think several steps ahead." He picked up a piece of chalk and began writing on the board. The equation he wrote was unlike anything they'd seen in class. It stretched across the entire board, a complex mixture of calculus, number theory, and advanced algebra. Symbols and notations that looked like they belonged in a university graduate program, not a high school classroom. The class went quiet as students tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Ashley leaned forward, her eyebrows furrowed. Chen, one of the top students, slowly shook his head in confusion. Even Rebecca, who usually had an answer for everything, just stared. "This," Mr. Peterson announced, setting down the chalk with a deliberate tap against the board, "is what I call a graduate-level problem. It combines multiple advanced concepts that even some mathematics professors would need time to work through." He paused for effect, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I don't actually expect any of you to solve it," he continued, his voice taking on an almost theatrical quality. "This is meant to show you the heights of mathematical thinking, to give you a glimpse of where true dedication and proper preparation can take you. Some of the brightest minds I've encountered in my 25 years of teaching have struggled with problems like this." Tyler raised his hand tentatively. "So is this just for us to see? We don't have to solve it?" "Correct. This is purely educational, a demonstration of advanced mathematical concepts." Mr. Peterson walked back toward his desk, that strange smirk still playing on his lips. Then he stopped, turned around, and his eyes locked directly on Devin. "Although," he said, his voice suddenly carrying a sharp edge, "perhaps we should give someone a chance to try. Mr. Carter, you've been very quiet back there. Why don't you come up to the board and show us what you've learned?" The classroom went deathly silent. Devin felt every muscle in his body tense. Around him, students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Ashley's mouth dropped open slightly. Melissa looked down at her desk, unable to watch. Even the students who hadn't noticed Mr. Peterson's treatment of Devin over the past weeks recognized this for what it was, a setup. Public humiliation disguised as opportunity. "Sir?" Devin's voice came out steadier than he felt. "You just said this was graduate level." "I did." "And you're always so attentive in class, taking all those notes. Surely some of that knowledge has sunk in." The false encouragement in Mr. Peterson's voice was painful to hear. "Come on, Mr. Carter, don't be shy. Show the class what you're capable of." Devin's heart hammered in his chest. He could feel the sympathetic looks from some students, the curious stares from others. A few people had their phones out, probably ready to record whatever humiliation was about to unfold. This was it. The moment Mr. Peterson had been building toward. The teacher wanted him to fail publicly, definitively, to prove whatever point he'd decided Devin represented, to show everyone that Devin didn't belong in this advanced class, at this school, in this world of higher mathematics. Devin thought about his options. He could refuse, but that would be seen as backing down. He could try and fail, which is exactly what Mr. Peterson wanted. Or he could walk out, but that would mean giving up on everything his mom had worked for. Then he thought about all those hours at the library, the advanced textbooks he'd been reading, the problems he'd been solving for fun, pushing himself further and further, the mathematical concepts he'd explored simply because they fascinated him. Devin stood up, The scraping of his chair against the floor seemed impossibly loud. Ashley caught his eye as he walked past her desk, and she gave him a small nod of support. But most students just watched in uncomfortable silence, waiting for the inevitable disaster. Devin reached the front of the classroom and stood before the massive equation on the board. Up close, it was even more intimidating. But as he stared at it, something clicked in his mind. He recognized parts of it, not from Mr. Peterson's class, but from his own independent study. Mr. Peterson leaned against his desk, arms crossed, that smirk now a full smile. He'd won, or so he thought. In a few minutes, Devin would admit defeat and the natural order would be restored. "Take your time, Mr. Carter," the teacher said, his voice dripping with false patience. "Though I should warn you, we do need to move on with today's lesson eventually." A few nervous laughs rippled through the class. Devin picked up a piece of chalk. His hand was shaking slightly, but he gripped it tighter. He took a deep breath and looked at the equation again. Really looked at it, and then he saw it. The pattern. The underlying structure that connected all the complex parts together. It was actually elegant in its own way, hidden beneath the intimidating symbols. The classroom waited. Phones were definitely recording now. Tyler leaned over to whisper something to Chen. Mr. Peterson checked his watch deliberately, making a show of Devin's hesitation. For a long moment, Devin didn't move. He just stared at the board, his mind working through possibilities, testing approaches, discarding dead ends. The silence stretched out, becoming painful. "Mr. Carter," Mr. Peterson finally said, "if you're not able to—" Devin started writing. The chalk made soft scratching sounds against the board as he began breaking down the problem. He wrote slowly at first, carefully, making sure each step was clear. Then his hand started moving faster as confidence built. He saw how the calculus portion connected to the number theory. He recognized a theorem he'd read about in one of those library books. Something about prime number distributions that most high school students never encountered. He applied it. The equation started to simplify. The whispers in the classroom stopped. Students sat up straighter, leaning forward to see what was happening. Ashley's eyes were wide with amazement. Chen's jaw had literally dropped open. Mr. Peterson's smirk began to fade. He stood up straighter, uncrossing his arms. His eyes narrowed as he watched Devin work, clearly not believing what he was seeing. Devin's mind was completely focused now. Everything else fell away. The classroom, the watching students, the humiliation that had been intended for him. There was only the problem, the chalk, and the solution unfolding before him. He filled one section of the board, then another. His handwriting was clear and precise, every step logical and justified. He was using techniques that most students in this room had never seen, pulling from depths of mathematical knowledge that surprised even himself. 5 minutes passed. Then 7. The classroom remained absolutely silent except for the sound of chalk on board. And then with one final line of calculation, Devin set down the chalk and stepped back. The problem was solved. Part 4. The unexpected response. Devin stepped back from the blackboard, his hand still trembling slightly from the adrenaline coursing through his body. The chalk dust on his fingers seemed like evidence of something impossible that had just happened. He'd solved it. He'd actually solved the problem that Mr. Peterson had called graduate level, the one meant to humble him. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. The classroom existed in a bubble of shocked silence. Then Ashley gasped. Actually gasped out loud. Her hand flew to her mouth as she stared at the blackboard covered in Devin's neat, methodical work. "No way," Chen whispered, loud enough for people nearby to hear. He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the board, his hands shaking. Tyler turned to Rebecca with his mouth hanging open. "Did that just happen?" Rebecca didn't answer. She was too busy reading through Devin's solution line by line, her expression shifting from disbelief to genuine awe. But all eyes eventually turned to Mr. Peterson. The teacher's face had gone through several shades of red before settling on something close to pale white. His jaw was clenched tight, and a muscle twitched near his temple. He pushed himself away from his desk where he'd been leaning, and walked slowly toward the board. Devin turned to face him, his heart still pounding. He'd done what was asked. He'd solved the impossible problem. But instead of feeling triumphant, he felt anxious. Because he knew men like Mr. Peterson. He knew that sometimes doing well wasn't enough. Sometimes it made things worse. Mr. Peterson stood inches from the board, his eyes scanning every line of Devon's work. He was looking for a mistake, searching desperately for an error, a miscalculation, a logical fallacy, anything that would let him dismiss what had just happened. He checked the first derivative. Correct. He verified the integration. Flawless. He examined the application of the number theory theorem. Perfect. The teacher's finger traced along the lines of work, moving faster and faster as he checked and rechecked. His breathing had become audible, heavy and frustrated. "Where did you?" Mr. Peterson started to say, then stopped. His voice had come out strained, almost strangled. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Where did you learn this method?" Devon stood his ground, though every instinct told him to shrink back. "I read a lot, sir. At the library. I've been studying advanced mathematics on my own." "On your own," Mr. Peterson repeated, as if the concept was foreign to him. He turned to look at Devon fully now, and there was something dangerous in his eyes. Not physical danger, but something else. The look of a man whose worldview had just been challenged. "This is." He gestured at the board, his hand shaking slightly. "This is college-level work. Graduate school, even." "You said it was graduate level, sir," Devon replied quietly. "You asked me to try." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. A few students exchanged glances, some fighting back smiles. Ashley looked like she wanted to cheer but knew better than to make a sound. Mr. Peterson turned back to the board, one more time, checking the solution again as if it might have changed in the last 30 seconds. But mathematics doesn't lie. The answer was right there, clear and undeniable. "The methodology here," Mr. Peterson said, his voice taking on a different tone now, accusatory rather than impressed, "is very advanced. Too advanced for most high school students. Where exactly did you say you studied this?" Devon felt a chill run down his spine. He understood what was happening. Mr. Peterson couldn't accept that Devon had solved it legitimately. The teacher was looking for a way to discredit him, to cast doubt on his achievement. "I told you, sir. The public library. They have university-level textbooks in the mathematics section. I've been reading them after school." "And you just happened to study this exact type of problem?" The skepticism in Mr. Peterson's voice was thick. "I study a lot of problems, sir, different types. I like mathematics." Devon's voice remained steady, but inside he was screaming. Even when he succeeded, it wasn't enough. Even when he did exactly what was asked, there was still doubt. Ashley couldn't take it anymore. "Mr. Peterson, Devon got a 98 on your last test. He's been acing everything. Why is this so hard to believe?" The teacher's head snapped toward her. "Miss Brooks, I don't recall asking for your input." "But he solved it," Ashley pressed on, her voice gaining strength. "It's right there on the board. You can check every step." "I am checking every step," Mr. Peterson said tersely. "And what I'm seeing is work that seems beyond the scope of independent study." Melissa joined in, unable to stay silent. "What are you saying? That he cheated somehow?" "He was standing at the board in front of all of us." "I'm not saying anything of the sort, Mr. Peterson shot back, but his implication had been clear. "I'm simply noting that this level of mathematical knowledge is unusual." Unusual for who? The question came from Chen, who'd been quiet until now. Chen was the son of 2 professors and had never faced the kind of scrutiny Devon dealt with daily. "I've been taking advanced math since 6th grade and I couldn't solve that problem. Devon did it in less than 10 minutes. That's not suspicious. That's impressive." The classroom was no longer silent. Students were murmuring to each other, some openly discussing what they'd just witnessed. The phones that had been recording Devon's expected failure had captured something entirely different. This video was going to spread, and there was nothing Mr. Peterson could do about it. Devon remained standing at the front of the class, his chalk-covered hands at his sides. He looked at the solution on the board one more time, at the elegant way the problem had unfolded once he understood its structure. He'd spent so many nights studying, so many hours proving himself, and yet here he was, still having to defend his abilities, Mr. Peterson seemed to realize he was losing control of the situation. The class had turned, and his attempt to humiliate Devin had spectacularly backfired. He needed to regain authority somehow. "Well," he said, his voice clipped and cold, "it appears you've managed to solve the problem, Mr. Carter. Though I still have questions about your methodology. We'll discuss this further after class." "There won't be anything to discuss," said a new voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway was Dr. Kim, the school's assistant principal. She'd been walking by when she heard the commotion and had stopped to investigate. She'd seen the last few minutes of the exchange, watched Mr. Peterson's questioning of Devin's work, heard the doubt and accusation in his voice. "Dr. Kim," Mr. Peterson said, clearly surprised. I saw what you were doing," Dr. Kim interrupted, walking into the classroom. She approached the blackboard and examined Devin's work. Unlike Mr. Peterson, her expression was one of genuine admiration. "This is remarkable work, truly remarkable." She turned to Devin. "You solved this independently? No outside help?" "Yes, ma'am," Devin replied. "Where did you learn these techniques?" "The public library, ma'am. I've been studying advanced mathematics textbooks after school." Dr. Kim nodded slowly, then turned to Mr. Peterson. "And this problem, you presented it to the class as unsolvable? As a demonstration?" Mr. Peterson's face reddened again. "I presented it as a challenge, a learning opportunity." "By singling out one student and putting him on the spot?" Dr. Kim's voice was sharp now. "That's not teaching, that's something else entirely." The bell rang, signaling the end of class, but nobody moved. This was too important to miss. "Mr. Carter," Dr. Kim said, "please come to my office after school. I'd like to discuss some opportunities that might interest you. Bring your transcript and any samples of your independent work." She looked at Mr. Peterson one more time, a look that promised a much longer conversation later, then walked out. The spell broke. Students started gathering their things, but the energy in the room had completely changed. As Devin walked back to his seat to get his backpack, students patted him on the back, congratulated him, asked him questions. Ashley was beaming. That was incredible. Even some students who'd never spoken to him before were looking at him with respect. Devin packed up his things in a daze. He'd come to class expecting another difficult hour. Instead, everything had changed. He'd proven himself in a way that couldn't be dismissed or diminished. As he walked out, he glanced back once at the blackboard, at his solution still written there in white chalk. Tomorrow they'd erase it and move on to other problems. But today, for this moment, his work stood as proof. He'd belonged here all along. Part 5. The Stunned Silence. The weekend that followed felt surreal to Devin. Word about what happened in Mr. Peterson's class spread through Lincoln High faster than a wildfire. By Saturday morning, the video that Chen had recorded was circulating through group chats, social media, and even reaching parents and teachers who weren't at school that day. Devin's phone, which usually stayed quiet except for messages from his mom, started buzzing constantly. Friend requests from students he'd never spoken to, messages of support, even a few interview requests from the school newspaper and yearbook committee. His mom had come home Friday night to find Devin sitting at their small kitchen table, staring at his homework but not really seeing it. "Baby, what's wrong?" she'd asked, immediately sensing something had happened. She worked so much that she couldn't always be there, but she knew her son. She could read his moods like a book. Devin had told her everything. About the months of mistreatment, the doubt, the impossible problem, and finally, the solution he'd written on that board. As he talked, his mom's eyes filled with tears, her hand covering her mouth. "I'm so proud of you," she'd whispered when he finished. "Not just for solving that problem, but for holding your head up every single day. That takes a different kind of strength." Now it was Monday morning, and Devin walked through the school doors feeling like he was entering a different building. Students he'd never met nodded at him in the hallways. A freshman actually asked for his autograph, which was ridiculous but also kind of nice. But the real change was in fourth period. Advanced mathematics. Devin walked into Mr. Peterson's classroom and the energy was completely different. Ashley had saved him a seat closer to the front this time, not in the back row where he'd been invisible for so long. "Sit here," she insisted, patting the desk next to her. "You've earned it." As students filed in, they kept glancing at the blackboard, even though Devon's solution had been erased over the weekend. The memory of it hung in the air like a ghost. Tyler stopped by Devon's desk. "Hey, man, that was seriously cool what you did. I'm sorry I never said anything before about how Peterson was treating you." Devon looked up, surprised. "Thanks, that means a lot. If you ever want to study together, let me know. I could actually learn something." Tyler smiled genuinely before heading to his seat. Chen approached next, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder. "I've been doing advanced math my whole life and I couldn't touch that problem." "You've got a real gift, Devon. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." One by one, students who had been silent witnesses to his mistreatment were now offering words of support. It felt good, but there was also something bittersweet about it. Where had these voices been over the past 2 months? Rebecca was the last to approach before the bell rang. "I know I should have said something sooner," she admitted quietly. "I saw how he treated you and I stayed quiet because it was easier. I'm sorry." "It's okay," Devon said, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. The bell rang and everyone scrambled to their seats. The classroom fell into an expectant silence. Mr. Peterson was late, which was unusual. He prided himself on punctuality. 5 minutes after the bell, the door opened. But it wasn't Mr. Peterson who walked in. It was Dr. Kim, the assistant principal, accompanied by a woman Devon didn't recognize. She was younger, probably in her 30s, wearing casual professional clothes and carrying a well-worn messenger bag. "Good morning, class," Dr. Kim said, her voice warm but carrying authority. "Mr. Peterson will not be teaching today. This is Miss Rodriguez. She'll be taking over the class for the time being." Whispers erupted immediately. Students exchanged glances, questions forming on their lips. Miss Rodriguez stepped forward with a friendly smile. "Hi, everyone. I know this is unexpected, but I'm excited to work with you all. I've heard great things about this class." Her eyes swept across the room and landed on Devon. Her smile widened slightly, knowingly. Dr. Kim continued, "I'll be sitting in on today's class. Just want to observe and make sure the transition goes smoothly." She took a seat at the back of the classroom, pulling out a notebook. Miss Rodriguez began the class with an energy that was completely different from Mr. Peterson's rigid, formal approach. She wrote a problem on the board and then asked, "Okay, who wants to take a shot at this? And don't worry about getting it wrong. Mistakes are how we learn." Hands shot up around the room. Ashley raised hers, Chen too, and Devon, after a moment's hesitation, raised his as well. "Let's hear from—" Miss Rodriguez looked around. "Devon, I've heard you're quite the mathematician." Devon felt all eyes on him again, but this time it felt different. He stood and approached the board, working through the problem methodically. When he finished, Miss Rodriguez didn't scrutinize his work looking for errors. She studied it and nodded appreciatively. "Excellent. Clean methodology, clear thinking. Well done." She turned to the class. "Can anyone identify an alternative approach we might take?" The class became interactive in a way it never had been before. Students debated methods, suggested solutions, built on each other's ideas. Miss Rodriguez encouraged every contribution, gently corrected mistakes without judgment, and pushed students to think deeper. Devon found himself actually enjoying the class for the first time all semester. After class, as students filed out chatting excitedly about the difference in teaching styles, Dr. Kim asked Devon to stay back. "I want you to know what's happening," she said once they were alone with Miss Rodriguez. "After Friday's incident, I had several conversations over the weekend. With Mr. Peterson, with the principal, and with the school district's equity officer." Devon's stomach tightened. "Am I in trouble?" "Trouble?" Dr. Kim looked genuinely surprised. "Devon, you're not in trouble. Mr. Peterson is. What happened Friday was the culmination of months of documented bias. You weren't the first student to be treated this way, but the incident Friday was so blatant, so public, that it couldn't be ignored anymore." "Where is he?" Devon asked. "He's been placed on administrative leave while the district investigates. Depending on what they find, he may not return to this classroom. At minimum, he'll undergo extensive training on bias and equity in education." Miss Rodriguez spoke up. "I've been brought in as a long-term substitute. I actually teach at the university level, but I was asked to step in here because of my experience with advanced students from diverse backgrounds." Dr. Kim showed me your work from Friday. That was genuinely graduate-level problem-solving. Thank you, Devin said quietly. There's something else, Dr. Kim continued. The state mathematics competition is coming up in 3 months. Every year, Lincoln High sends a team. Mr. Peterson was responsible for selecting team members. And somehow, despite your obvious abilities, you were never mentioned for it. Devin hadn't even known there was a competition. I'd like you to be team captain, Miss Rodriguez said. I've reviewed your test scores, your homework, and that solution from Friday. You're exactly the kind of student who should be representing this school. Devin felt overwhelmed. Just days ago, he'd been the invisible student in the back row, doubted and dismissed. Now he was being asked to lead a team? I don't know if he started. You can do this, Dr. Kim interrupted gently. And you should. Not just for yourself, but for every student who comes after you. You've already started changing things at this school. Don't stop now. That afternoon, Ashley found Devin at his locker. Her face was serious. Have you heard about the petition? She asked. What petition? She pulled out her phone and showed him. Students had started an online petition demanding permanent changes to how teachers were monitored and evaluated at Lincoln High. It had over 300 signatures already, including testimonials from students about various incidents they'd witnessed or experienced. You started something important Friday, Ashley said. People are finally talking about stuff that's been happening for years. Devin closed his locker and leaned against it, processing everything. A week ago, he just wanted to survive the class. Now students were organizing, policies were being examined, and he was being asked to lead a math team. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. Heard from your principal today. She said good things. So proud of you, baby. You're changing that school. Devin smiled. Maybe that's what happened when you stopped trying to be invisible, when you showed people exactly what you were capable of, even when they didn't want to see it. Maybe that's when real change began. Part 6. The Aftermath. 3 weeks had passed since that Friday afternoon, and Lincoln High School was still buzzing with change. The petition Ashley had shown Devin had grown to over 800 signatures, including parents, alumni, and even some teachers who'd witnessed problems but hadn't known how to address them. Devin had settled into his new role as math team captain, meeting twice a week after school with a group of 5 other students. Miss Rodriguez coached them, but her style was collaborative rather than authoritative. She treated them like the capable young mathematicians they were. The team included Ashley, Chen, and 3 students from other advanced math classes: Jordan, who was quiet but brilliant with geometry; Nina, who could calculate complex equations in her head; and David, whose strength was logic proofs. Together they were formidable. Okay, Miss Rodriguez said during one practice session. The state competition is 6 weeks away. They'll throw everything at you. Calculus, statistics, discrete math, even some theoretical concepts. Devin, want to lead today's practice round? Devin stood at the whiteboard, a position that felt natural now. Let's start with a probability problem. Nina, you got this? The dynamic in that room was everything Mr. Peterson's class had never been. Students built on each other's strengths, admitted when they were stuck, celebrated each other's breakthroughs. No one was trying to prove they were smarter than anyone else. They were just trying to get better together. But not everything had changed smoothly. The investigation into Mr. Peterson was ongoing, and it had revealed more than anyone expected. Students from previous years had come forward with their own stories. There was a pattern, a clear one, of certain students being encouraged and others being subtly pushed away from advanced opportunities. One afternoon, Dr. Kim called Devin to her office again. When he arrived, he found his mom already there, sitting in one of the chairs across from the principal's desk. His heart jumped. Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay? His mom stood and hugged him. I'm fine, baby. Dr. Kim called me in for a meeting. It's good news. Dr. Kim gestured for them both to sit. Devin, the district has completed its investigation. Mr. Peterson will not be returning to Lincoln High. He's been reassigned to administrative duties at the district office, where he won't have direct student contact. He'll also be required to complete extensive bias training. Devin didn't know how to feel. Part of him felt relieved. Part of him felt something else harder to name. There's more, Dr. Kim continued. The school board has implemented new policies district-wide. All teachers will undergo mandatory equity training. Student advocacy groups will be established at every school, and there will be regular audits of advanced programs to ensure fair access. Because of what happened to Devin? His mom asked, partly, but also because Devin's situation brought to light systemic issues that had been ignored for too long. Sometimes it takes one person's courage to start a movement. Devin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I wasn't trying to start anything. I just wanted to learn math. I know, Dr. Kim said gently. But impact isn't always about intention. You showed up, you did excellent work, and when you were challenged unfairly, you rose to that challenge. Other students saw that and found their own courage. After the meeting, Devin and his mom walked out to the parking lot together. She'd taken time off from work to be there, something she rarely could afford to do. How are you really doing with all this? She asked, leaning against her car. Devin thought about it. I'm okay. Sometimes I still feel like I need to prove myself, you know? Like if I mess up once, people will say Mr. Peterson was right about me. His mom cupped his face in her hands. Listen to me. You don't owe anyone perfection. You're a brilliant young man, but you're also human. You're allowed to struggle sometimes. You're allowed to not know everything. That doesn't make you less worthy of being here. Those words hit harder than Devin expected. He'd been carrying so much pressure not just to succeed, but to be flawless. To be beyond criticism. Back in Miss Rodriguez's class, things continued to improve. She'd introduced them to concepts that Mr. Peterson never covered, not because they were too difficult, but because they were too interesting. She showed them how math connected to art, music, cryptography, and quantum physics. She made them see mathematics as a living, breathing field of exploration, rather than just formulas to memorize. One day, she announced a surprise. I've arranged for someone special to visit our class next week. Dr. James Morrison from the State University. He's a mathematician who specializes in number theory, and he wants to meet you all, especially you, Devin. Me? Why? Because I sent him your solution to that graduate-level problem. He's been studying it. He wants to talk to you about your approach. The day of Dr. Morrison's visit, Devin was more nervous than he'd been for any test, a real university professor coming to discuss his work. It felt unreal. Dr. Morrison turned out to be nothing like Devin expected. He was younger than Mr. Peterson, with an easy smile and an enthusiasm for mathematics that was infectious. He spent the first half of class talking about unsolved problems in mathematics, making them accessible and exciting. Then he pulled up Devin's solution on the projector. This, he said, pointing at the screen, is elegant work. The approach shown here isn't in most textbooks. It's intuitive, creative problem solving. Can you walk us through your thinking, Devin? Devin stood and explained his thought process, how he'd recognized the underlying structure, how he'd applied concepts from different areas of mathematics. As he talked, Dr. Morrison nodded along, occasionally asking questions that pushed Devin to think even deeper. You have a natural talent for this, Dr. Morrison said when Devin finished. Have you thought about pursuing mathematics at the university level? The truth was, Devin hadn't let himself think that far ahead. University felt like something for other people who didn't have to worry about money or whether they belonged. I don't know if I can afford it, Devin admitted. There are scholarships, Dr. Morrison said, programs specifically designed to support talented students from underrepresented backgrounds in mathematics. Miss Rodriguez has my contact information. When you're ready to apply to universities, reach out. I'd be happy to write you a recommendation. After class, Ashley practically bounced over to Devin's desk. Did that just happen? Did a university professor just basically offer to help you get into college? I think so, Devin said, still processing. That's incredible. You're going to end up at some amazing school, probably with a full scholarship, and you'll become a famous mathematician or something. Devin laughed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I still need to pass regular high school first. But that night, lying in bed, Devin let himself imagine it. College. A place where his love of mathematics would be celebrated, not questioned. A place where his presence wouldn't be treated as suspicious. A place where he truly belonged. The next day at lunch, Devin sat with his math team in the cafeteria. It had become their regular spot, pushing 2 tables together so they could all fit. They weren't just a competition team anymore. They'd become friends. 6 weeks until the state competition, Chen said between bites of his sandwich. Think we're ready? We will be, Devin said confidently. We've been working hard. Remember when Mr. Peterson said some of us didn't have the proper preparation? Ashley said, then immediately regretted bringing it up. Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned him. It's okay, Devin said. Actually, you know what? I'm glad he gave me that impossible problem. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Really? Nina asked. Yeah, because it showed me what I was capable of. It showed everyone. If he'd just left me alone to struggle in the back of the class, maybe nothing would have changed. But he pushed and I pushed back harder. Sometimes the obstacles people put in your way become the platforms you stand on. Jordan raised his juice box. That's deep, man. But also true. They all laughed, clinking their drinks together in a silly toast. Devin looked around the table at these people who'd become his friends. His team. A few months ago, he'd walked into Lincoln High feeling alone and unwelcome. Now he had people who saw him, believed in him, and stood beside him. The story wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome. But for the first time since moving to this school, Devin felt like he wasn't facing them alone, and that made all the difference. Part 7. The Investigation and Change. The district's investigation had uncovered something far bigger than anyone anticipated. What started as one teacher's mistreatment of one student had revealed cracks in the entire system. Dr. Kim sat in her office late one evening, reading through reports that made her heart heavy. Over 30 students from the past 5 years had come forward with complaints about Mr. Peterson. But it wasn't just him. The investigation had expanded to examine patterns across the entire district. Advanced placement programs, honors classes, gifted and talented selections. The data painted an uncomfortable picture. Students like Devin, talented kids from certain backgrounds or neighborhoods, were consistently overlooked for advanced opportunities. Not because they lacked ability, but because of assumptions about who belonged in those spaces. The school board called an emergency meeting. Parents packed the auditorium, some angry, some defensive, all demanding answers. Devin's mom was there, sitting in the third row, her work uniform still on because she'd come straight from her shift. The superintendent stood at the podium, looking tired and serious. We've completed our investigation into the complaints at Lincoln High School. What we found was unacceptable. Not just one teacher's bias, but systemic failures in how we identify and support talented students from all backgrounds. He outlined the changes coming. Mandatory unconscious bias training for all staff. New protocols for advanced program admissions that removed subjective evaluations. Student advisory committees with real power to report concerns. Regular audits of classroom environments and teaching practices. We failed students, the superintendent admitted. Students who deserved better from us. Students who had to work twice as hard just to be seen. That ends now. Not everyone was happy about the changes. Some teachers felt they were being accused unfairly. Some parents worried that standards were being lowered. But the district moved forward anyway because the evidence was too clear to ignore. Back at Lincoln High, Miss Rodriguez had become more than just a substitute teacher. The school had offered her a permanent position, which she'd accepted. Her advanced mathematics class had transformed into something special, a place where students genuinely wanted to learn. One afternoon, she pulled Devin aside after class. I wanted you to know something. The district is creating a new program called the Academic Justice Initiative. It's designed to identify students who've been overlooked and give them the support they deserve. That's good, Devin said, wondering why she was telling him specifically. They want you to be part of the advisory board, to help design the program from a student's perspective. Devin blinked. Me? But you're not just anything, Miss Rodriguez interrupted gently. You're someone who lived through what we're trying to fix. Your voice matters. Your experience matters. Devin agreed to join the board, which met every other week after school. The group included students from across the district, all with similar stories. There was Keisha, who'd been told she wasn't AP material despite straight A's. There was Luis, whose accent had made teachers assume he needed ESL support when he was actually fluent in 3 languages. There was Jasmine, who used a wheelchair and had been steered away from lab sciences because of safety concerns. Together, they worked with administrators to create real solutions. Not just policies on paper, but actionable changes. They designed a blind review system for advanced program applications where names and schools were removed. They created mentorship programs pairing students with professionals in various fields. They established safe reporting channels for bias incidents. The work was hard and sometimes frustrating. Old habits don't die easily, and there were teachers who resisted the changes. But slowly things began to shift. Meanwhile, the state mathematics competition was approaching fast. Devon's team practiced relentlessly. Miss Rodriguez pushed them, but differently than Mr. Peterson ever had. She pushed them to think deeper, to question their assumptions, to find beauty in the complexity of mathematics. 2 weeks before the competition, Devon received an unexpected visitor at school. Mr. Peterson. Dr. Kim had called Devon to her office, and when he arrived, the former teacher was sitting there, looking older and smaller than Devon remembered. "Devon," Dr. Kim said carefully, "Mr. Peterson asked if he could speak with you. You're under no obligation to do this. I can ask him to leave right now if you want." Devon looked at his former teacher. Mr. Peterson's hands were folded in his lap, and he couldn't quite meet Devon's eyes. "It's okay," Devon said, taking a seat. "I'll hear what he has to say." Dr. Kim nodded but stayed in the room, positioned where she could intervene if needed. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Devon, I wrote you a letter, but Dr. Kim suggested I should say this in person. I owe you an apology. What I did to you was wrong. The way I treated you, the assumptions I made, the opportunities I denied you, all of it was wrong." He finally looked up, and Devon saw something genuine in his expression. Regret, maybe, shame. "I told myself I was maintaining standards," Mr. Peterson continued, "that I was protecting the integrity of advanced education. But the truth is, I was protecting my own narrow view of who deserved to be there. I made judgments based on where you came from instead of who you were. And I hurt you because of it." Devon sat quietly, processing. Part of him wanted to stay angry. Part of him wanted to reject this apology as too little, too late. But another part of him was just tired of carrying that weight. "I went through the mandatory training," Mr. Peterson said. "Hours of workshops on bias and equity. At first I was defensive. I kept thinking everyone was overreacting, but then they showed us data, real patterns of who gets encouraged and who gets discouraged, who gets second chances and who doesn't. I saw myself in that data, and it made me sick." "Why are you telling me this?" Devon asked. "Because you deserved better, because I'm hoping to learn from my mistakes, and because I wanted you to know that what happened wasn't about your worth, it was about my failings." Devon took a deep breath. "I accept your apology. But you should know it's not really for me. It's for every student who comes after me, the ones who won't have to go through what I did because the system changed." Mr. Peterson nodded slowly. "You're right, and for what it's worth, I've been following your progress. Dr. Kim told me about the math competition, about Dr. Morrison's visit, about the advisory board. You're doing remarkable things. I'm just doing what I always could have done if someone had let me." Those words hung in the air. Mr. Peterson stood to leave, pausing at the door. "I hope you win that competition. I genuinely do." After he left, Dr. Kim looked at Devon with concern. "Are you okay?" That was a lot. "I'm okay," Devon said, and he meant it. "Weird thing is, I don't hate him anymore. I'm just sad about all the time I wasted worrying about what he thought of me." "That's maturity," Dr. Kim said with a small smile. "Using your energy for building rather than fighting." The weekend before the competition, Devon's math team gathered at Ashley's house for a final practice session. Her parents had set up snacks and drinks in the living room, treating the team like they were professional athletes before a big game. They worked through practice problems, quizzed each other, and reviewed strategies. But mostly they laughed and talked and reminded each other why they loved mathematics in the first place. "We're ready," Chen said as evening approached. "Whatever happens next weekend, we've already won. We've built something real here." Devon looked around at his team, his friends. Chen was right. The competition would be exciting. Maybe they'd win and maybe they wouldn't. But what they'd created together, this community of people who believed in each other and pushed each other to be better, that was the real victory. His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. "Remember, baby, you've already changed everything. Tomorrow is just icing on the cake. Proud of you always." Devon smiled. 6 months ago, he'd walked into Mr. Peterson's class just hoping to survive. Now he was leading a team, advising administrators and helping reshape his school's future. He hadn't just proven he belonged. He'd helped create a place where everyone could belong. Part 8. The Transformation. The state mathematics competition was held at the university downtown. in a massive lecture hall that made Devin's heart race the moment he walked in. Teams from 43 schools across the state filled the seats, all wearing their school colors and team shirts. Lincoln High's team wore navy blue with gold letters that Miss Rodriguez had gotten printed for them. Devin's mom had gotten the day off work to be there. She sat in the parent section wearing her own navy and gold, a small Lincoln High pennant in her hand. She caught Devin's eye and gave him a thumbs up, her smile so wide it made his chest tight. The competition was brutal. 3 hours of increasingly difficult problems spanning every area of mathematics they'd studied and some they hadn't. Teams worked together, hunched over papers, calculators clicking, pencils scratching frantically. Devin's team fell into a rhythm they'd practiced dozens of times. Nina handled the probability questions, her mental math faster than anyone's calculator. Jordan tackled geometry, sketching diagrams with precision. Chen and Ashley teamed up on the calculus sections, building on each other's insights. David worked through the logic proofs methodically, and Devin floated between them all, checking work, offering suggestions, keeping everyone calm and focused. When they hit a particularly nasty problem in the advanced section, one that had them all stumped, Devin felt that familiar feeling from months ago. The moment at the blackboard when Mr. Peterson had expected him to fail. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't alone. "Wait," Ashley said, looking at the problem from a different angle. "What if we approach it like this?" "That could work," Chen added, building on her idea. "And if we apply the theorem from Devin's original solution back in class?" Together they cracked it. Not because one person was brilliant, but because they'd learned to think as a team. When time was called, Devin wasn't sure how they'd done. Some problems had been solved easily. Others had pushed them to their limits. A few had defeated them entirely, but they'd given it everything they had. The awards ceremony happened that evening. Teams and families gathered back in the lecture hall, the tension in the air thick enough to cut. Third place was announced, not Lincoln High, second place. Also not them. Devin felt his stomach drop. They'd worked so hard, changed so much, and maybe it hadn't been enough. Then the announcer stepped up to the microphone, and this year's state mathematics competition first-place winners with a nearly perfect score, Lincoln High School. The room erupted. Devin's team jumped up, hugging each other, shouting with joy. In the parent section, Devin's mom was crying, standing and clapping so hard her hands had to hurt. Miss Rodriguez was beaming, tears in her own eyes. They walked onto the stage to accept the trophy, the lights bright and hot. The trophy was tall and golden and heavier than Devin expected. As team captain, he held it first, but immediately passed it to Ashley, then to Chen, then to each team member in turn. This wasn't his victory. It was theirs, but the announcer wasn't done. "We also have a special individual recognition." The judges were unanimous in selecting this year's Outstanding Mathematician Award for exceptional problem-solving and innovative approaches. "This award goes to Devin Carter from Lincoln High." Devin's legs felt weak as he stepped forward again. The judge who handed him the medal was Dr. Morrison, the university professor who'd visited their class. "Told you that you had a gift?" Dr. Morrison said quietly as he placed the medal around Devin's neck. "Keep developing it." The celebration afterward was loud and joyful. Other teams came over to congratulate them. Parents took 1,000,000 photos. Local news crews interviewed Miss Rodriguez and Devin, asking about their winning strategy. But the moment Devin treasured most came when he found his mom waiting by the entrance. She pulled him into a hug so tight he could barely breathe. "My baby," she whispered. "My brilliant baby. I knew you could do it. I always knew. I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. The move, the sacrifices, believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." She pulled back and looked at him seriously. "You did this. Your hard work, your determination, your refusal to let anyone make you small. I'm just grateful I got to watch." 3 months later, spring had arrived at Lincoln High, and with it, visible changes everywhere. The Academic Justice Initiative was in full swing. Students who'd been overlooked were being identified and supported. The blind review system for advanced programs was working, and the demographics of honors classes were starting to reflect the actual diversity of the student body. Devin had started something even more personal. A tutoring program that met twice a week in the library, open to any student who needed help with mathematics. But it wasn't just about homework. It was about showing kids that they were capable, that they belonged in advanced classes if they wanted to be there. One afternoon, a young student named Terrell came to the tutoring session. He was in 8th grade at the middle school across the street, planning to attend Lincoln High next year. He was nervous and quiet, reminding Devin of himself just months earlier. "I'm not really good at math," Terrell said, looking at his homework. "My teacher says I should stick to regular classes." Devin sat down next to him. "Can I tell you something? A few months ago, my teacher told me I didn't belong in advanced math, that I should take easier classes." "Know what happened?" Terrell shook his head. "I helped my team win the state championship, and I got accepted to 3 different universities with full scholarship offers." Terrell's eyes widened. "Really? Really? Want to know the secret?" "There is no secret. You work hard, you ask for help when you need it, and you don't let anyone tell you what you're capable of. Now let's look at this homework." They worked through the problems together, and Devin watched Terrell's confidence grow with each correct answer. By the end of the session, the kid was smiling, already talking about taking advanced classes in high school. Ashley found Devin after the tutoring session ended. "You're good at this. Like really good. Teaching, mentoring, all of it, thanks. It feels important, you know? Like I can help other kids avoid what I went through." "Have you decided which university you're choosing?" Ashley asked. She'd been accepted to several schools too, and they'd been comparing options for weeks. "I think I'm going with State University. Dr. Morrison's there, and they have the best mathematics program. Plus I can come home on weekends to keep running the tutoring program." "That's perfect. You're going to do amazing things, Devin, you already have." The final day of school arrived with a mix of excitement and nostalgia. Devin walked through the hallways of Lincoln High, remembering his first day. How lost and unwelcome he'd felt. How small he'd tried to make himself. Miss Rodriguez called him to her classroom one last time. "I wanted to give you this," she said, handing him a folder. Inside were copies of all his best work from the year, including that original solution that had changed everything. "Keep these," she said. "Not just as memories, but as reminders. When college gets hard, when you doubt yourself, look at these and remember what you overcame to get there." "Thank you," Devin said, "for everything. For believing in me. For making math fun again. You made my job easy. You reminded me why I became a teacher, to find students like you and watch them soar." At graduation, Devin walked across the stage to receive his diploma with honors. His mom screamed his name from the audience, not caring who heard. He'd also been selected to give a short speech as part of the ceremony. Standing at the podium, looking out at his classmates, Devin felt the weight of the moment. So much had changed in 1 year, not just for him but for the whole school. 6 months ago, he began. "I was just trying to survive. I didn't think I belonged here. Someone had convinced me that where I came from mattered more than where I was going. But then something happened. I was given a problem I wasn't supposed to solve. And when I solved it anyway, everything changed." He paused, making eye contact with students across the audience. "Here's what I learned. Your worth isn't determined by who believes in you. It's not about fitting into someone else's expectations. It's about showing up, doing the work, and refusing to accept limitations that other people try to place on you. And when you get your chance to prove yourself, don't just do it for you. Do it for everyone who'll come after you. Because change doesn't happen when we succeed quietly. It happens when we succeed loudly enough that the system has to notice." The applause was thunderous. Students stood, some crying, some cheering. Devin saw faces in the crowd of kids who'd been through their own struggles, who understood exactly what he meant. After the ceremony, as families took photos and said their goodbye,